Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. It's hard to believe, but spring practice comes to an end this Friday night under the lights in the Big House with the much-anticipated spring game. Beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive told me the improvement he's seen take place with this team is very impressive. He joins me in just a minute on our game day segment for this week. First, a few news and notes to get us started. Michigan picked up another 2 verbal commits on Monday for the class of 2017. 4-star running back A.J. Dillon from Lawrence Academy in Groton, Massachusetts, and 3-star safety Jamerick Woods from Florence High School in Florence, Alabama. Dillon is 6'1", 230 pounds. Last fall, he rushed for 1,887 yards and 26 touchdowns. Woods ranks as the number 16 prospect in the state of Alabama and chose Michigan over offers from Duke, Florida, Mississippi State, Louisville, Penn State, Tennessee, and many others. Dillon picked Michigan over Notre Dame and Florida State. The other players currently committed to Michigan for 2017 are 5-star quarterback Dylan McCaffrey, 4-star linebacker Josh Ross, 4-star offensive lineman Raymond Hall, 3-star running back Kurt Taylor, 3-star tight end Carter Dunaway from Birmingham Brother Rice, and 3-star corner Benjamin St. Juste. In total, we've picked up 8 verbals for the class of 2017, and as of this week, the class is ranked number 8 nationally. Jim Harbaugh is not only repeating his satellite camp stops this summer, he's also increasing his appearances at other college coaches' camps. Harbaugh and staff will be appearing at 2 college camps in June, and there could be more added later. In addition to stopping at Art Briles' Baylor camp on June 12th, Harbaugh and company will be guest instructors at Willie Taggart's University of South Florida's camp on June 4th. Harbaugh helped recruit Taggart to Western Kentucky University when his dad was head coach back in 1994. Those stops, as well as the other satellite camps, are all tentative right now. The NCAA is expected to vote on whether or not it will allow satellite camps at some point in April. On Friday, Michigan will take the field in the Big House to play their first ever Friday night spring game. A big crowd is expected, and if you can't make it to Ann Arbor in person, you can watch the game live on BTN. It will be another showcase evening for Michigan football. Joining me next on our game day segment is Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Here on the Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Back with us on our game day segment to talk Michigan football is beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Been a while, Nick. It's great to have you back talking Michigan football.
Yeah, it's great to be back with you, Mike.
Well, Nick, let's start with some of your observations from Saturday's practice at Ford Field. It was open to the public, open to the media. The quarterback competition. Is there, to you, a clear-cut leader at this point?
No, there's not. I mean, it's I still think that the guy with the most experience, obviously, is John O'Korn, and I think that still says a lot or speaks for something. But at the same time, it's interesting. I wrote after that first week in Florida, I wrote that O'Korn is probably the guy who is best in position to say that it's his job to lose, but he still has to win the job if that makes sense. And I think that's still certainly the case. And, on Saturday, you could see that Wilton Spade actually was the guy who, was taking the first snaps. He and O'Korn were not quite sharing first-team reps in the first, probably hour and a half. I think Wilton actually probably got more first-team reps than O'Korn did. So, Harbaugh said he didn't have a list in terms of a ranking order, but from just kind of watching, it appeared that it was at least on Saturday, it was Wilton Spate, then John O'Korn, then Shane Morris. Shane Morris being a distant third, sort of, and O'Korn being kind of like, maybe 1 1/2, I guess, if that makes sense. So, point being, no one has pulled away. I think everyone, it seems like, has had, their ups and their downs, and, staff is still waiting for those mistakes to sort of go away. They're waiting for somebody to take the job or take hold of it and kind of run with it, and that just hasn't happened.
Nick, you mentioned, I think it was in one of your Saturday articles or Sunday articles wrapping up that practice, that O'Korn looked, maybe a little bit nervous or tentative at times to you, and then he looked very good at other times. Do you think that's just because he's still new to the offense?
Yeah, it certainly could be, because that's something that, there's times where he looked, he looks like he's forcing stuff. He looks like he's trying too hard. He's trying to avoid an error. He's trying to avoid, a bad rep on film, whatever it might be. You can kind of tell that's what's going on. And then there's times where he just really lets it loose, and he looks really, really good. And like Saturday, for instance, there were times early in that practice where he wasn't, he just wasn't doing anything. I mean, he wasn't seeing anything downfield. It was a constant, dump off to a running back in 11-on-11s, or just missing guys. I mean, that was the other alternative. And then, as time kind of went on and guys got settled a little bit, he ripped off like a 50-yard touchdown pass that was probably the best throw of the day, and then he had a 30-yarder that was probably the second best throw of the day. He beat Jordan Lewis on that second one. So, I mean, there's times where he certainly looks like the best guy. And then there's times where he's making mistakes, and you can see why, Michigan's kind of dinging him a little bit. And my guess would be that, Wilton Spates probably earned more reps, and at the same time, I think they've used that as an opportunity to kind of maybe motivate John O'Korn, and say, and kind of let him know that, hey, we will start someone else if you don't, perform consistently enough to win this job. But good thing for all is that they have a long way to go. It's only March, and there's still plenty of time. They got the whole summer and all the fall camp to work on their game. They still got a week of spring ball, so there's still plenty of time left for those guys to settle in.
Well, we've mentioned Spate and O'Korn. Of course, Shane Morris is the other quarterback that's in that mix. We know he has a world of ability. He has that gun of an arm. In the past, decision-making and accuracy have been his bugaboos, or what's holding him back. Have you seen improvement from Shane in what you've got to see from him this spring?
Yeah, there are times that he looks better. I think he's a better quarterback overall, but at the same time, it's still, he's streaky. I think that's the best way to describe Shane. He's really streaky. There's moments where, if he's throwing 10 passes, he'll get on a roll there where maybe 3 in a row are just like really, really nice balls that you see, why people were so high on him when he was a younger prospect in terms of that arm strength and his ability to put the thing anywhere he needs to put it. But then what'll happen with Shane is he'll make a mistake, which happens. Everybody makes a mistake, but he'll let that mistake kind of linger, it seems like, and he'll let that turn into 3 or 4, really bad throws in a row. I mean, it seems like he has a really hard time, getting through a negative play and moving on. I think, Jake Rudock had said earlier this month when we were talking with him, either at a banquet or maybe it was pro day, he had said that the guy who will win the job ultimately is the guy who responds the best to a mistake, responds the best to a negative play, a sack, an incompletion, maybe an interception. The guy who can get over it and move on immediately and get, if he misses a guy, an open guy downfield and it's incomplete in the middle of the game, the guy who can shake that off and let go and go back into the huddle and have the same reaction to his teammates as he did the play before, and not obviously let it get him down. And that's Shane's issue right now. I think that's always kind of been his thing, is one play cannot kill the next 5 for you. It has to be, you've got to be able to be more consistent. You got to be able to get rid of that streakiness. And I think Judge Fish talks about that a lot in terms of that shot selection and everything else. Shane still has ability, certainly, but he's got to be less streaky and more consistent. And I think all the guys, really, that's the one thing for all of them. The streakiness has got to go away, and they got to get more consistent with making the safe and the right throw.
Well, let's talk about some of the players who've shown improvement since the IMG week, the first week of spring practice. It sounds like Zach Gentry and Tyrone Wheatley Jr. lead the way in that category, Nick.
Yeah, Gentry was the one who stood out to me the most on Saturday, mainly because he was kind of a guy who looked like a fish out of water to me in Florida earlier this month. I mean, he looked, he looks bigger and all those things in terms of the weight gain, but, he'd line up at tight end, and I would you'd see him run a route, and it looked like it was just, it looked like he was taking everything he had to concentrate on just getting the route right, or it was taking everything he had in terms of concentration on just letting that ball, kind of looking that thing in and catching it. It was just every little thing. Nothing was natural or easy to him, and you could tell it was a struggle, and it was something that he was adjusting to. But a month later, on Saturday, or 3.5 weeks, whatever it was, on Saturday, all that was gone, and it looked like a guy who had really sort of found a groove at tight end. I mean, the route was natural, the catch was natural, and then you could see him. You could sort of use his really, impressive athleticism for a guy that size to do stuff after the catch. So, I think his blocking and everything else is going to be a work in progress. I'm not sure. It looks like he's got a long way to go there, but he looks like he could be a guy who makes a difference for them this season. He could be on the field. I mean, he could be a guy who they could throw in there and play. I would think in the fall and say, we've got some stuff we think you can do, and we think you can help us. So, really special athlete and a guy who's a really nice prospect. I think it's going to work out for him down the road as long as he continues to buy in, which he's doing right now. I think he could turn into a really nice, prospect for them. And then Wheatley Jr. was working. He worked with the starters from the minute camp began, and is still getting plenty of time with them now. And it's just he's a guy that, he's 285 pounds. I mean, he looks like an offensive tackle. But then you see him get off the line and get against the linebacker, and he's outrunning guys. He catches everything. He just does stuff that guys that size sort of aren't supposed to do, and it's really impressive. I think the tight end depth, which going into spring, you kind of wondered who do they have behind Jake Butt. Obviously, they're moving Khalid Hill out of there to play fullback, but I think if you look at the advancements Wheatley's made, I mean, he's already a natural blocker. He looks like a guy who can play at this level right now. I think he's gotten better. I think Ian Bunting's gotten better. And then you've got Zach Gentry, who I think can do something for you down the road. So I think the tight end position originally it looked like maybe you'd have some depth issues, but now it looks like it might be maybe even a strength for you. So those guys have really come a long way in a month, and they're not the only ones, but they're the ones who sort of stood out to me the most as guys who really made some big strides.
You mentioned on MLive two of the freshmen that look ready to contribute are Devin Bush Jr. and Carlo Kemp. Talk about those two kids and why you think that.
Well, Bush is ready in terms of his sort of mental ability to, I think, just conceptualize football. I think he doesn't, he's sort of like maybe what Brandon Peters is on the other side of the ball, where everything just sort of comes natural to him. But Devin seems to have more of a physical readiness than Peters does right now, and that I think he's closer to where he needs to be weight-wise, strength-wise. He looks like he's fine. I said this, and some people were concerned when I said this, but I'm saying this as a compliment. I think he reminded me and has reminded me of a more athletic Desmond Morgan. And when I say that, I mean all the qualities I thought Desmond Morgan had as a linebacker. In that, if you were just playing him inside of a box and saying you were only playing into the tackle box, and all the football was played right there, and the only thing you had to do was own a gap, stick a fullback, and not give up an inch when a running back's coming through the hole. Desmond Morgan was always able to do that very well, and Devin Bush the same way. He's more than willing to put his face into a gap, own the gap, shed a line or shed a fullback, shed a guard, make a play inside the tackle box. He's certainly able to do that, even though he looks a little bit small. He's aggressive enough and he's strong enough to do that. And the thing that Desmond didn't have, that Devin Bush does have, is he can get out on the perimeter and he can chase guys down. I mean, he can cover. I think that the coverage stuff, I mean, the technical part of coverage, I think is something that'll probably have to be a work in progress with him because it's pretty new in terms of this, being advanced like this. But he can get out and he can chase a guy down. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's the fastest they have. And I think with that said, I think that means he's certainly going to be in the rotation. He's certainly going to play. Carlo Kemp, I think that it's interesting. He started out camp as a linebacker, and that didn't look like it was going to work. He was a linebacker all week at Florida. He looked out of place, and I guess I was right because they moved him to he's now playing defensive end. And on last Saturday, he looked much better. He looks much more comfortable as a defensive end. That looks like where maybe his future will be. I don't know if he'll be able to get into the rotation. We'll see. That's a pretty deep spot for Michigan in terms of you got guys that are going to play heavy snaps like Chris Wormley and Taco Charlton. Rashawn Gary is going to start out at defensive end. Everybody knows what he can do. So he'll have a chance, though, because it's, they need as many guys as they can up front, obviously. Chase Winovich is another guy, defensive end, who I think they like what they've seen from him. So we'll see if he gets on the field a lot or at all, but I think that more importantly, Carlo Kemp seems to have found his position, at least in the spring, and maybe we'll have something to just one thing to focus on moving forward through the summer and one thing on his plate, which is obviously positive.
Well, by position group, Nick, let's get your take on where we are at this point of spring practice with it winding down. We just touched on the tight end group and the defensive line group, but the offensive line, it finally looks like this group might be ready to reach their full potential, Nick, doesn't it?
Yep. I think that, finally, we've said it forever and ever and ever. It seems like I've been saying this for 20 years, but it finally looks like, and I don't know what's going to happen beyond this year because you're going to lose all these seniors. But I think for right now, it finally looks like a group that is really ready to be not certainly not a liability, certainly not somebody who's just kind of there trying to make a stalemate, but somebody who's really a group that's out there actually moving bodies and really becoming an asset in the power running game. I think that they've looked noticeably better to me in camp against Michigan's defensive line, and we know Michigan's defensive line is pretty good. Obviously, Ryan Glasgow's not in there, but Brian Monet's back, Wormley and Taco Charlton are in there, Hurst is in there. So that's really, they're playing against really good football players every day, and they're holding their own. They're losing some battles, obviously, but they're winning far more than they did, a year ago. It would surprise me, although at the same time, it's going to be hard to judge them in the spring game because it's going to be a split squad deal. But it would still surprise me if we saw the same sort of running, the zero rushing production that we've seen in the last 4 spring games, where they end spring and the offensive line is just a total mess. And we hear this, well, the defensive line is just better. And it's like, well, are they really? That kind of thing. I think these guys up front have gotten better. I think Kalis and Magnuson and Braden, as fifth-year seniors, are as confident as they've ever been. And they're comfortable with the being in the same system for the second year in a row. None of them have really ever been able to do that, so that's a positive. Mason Cole has looked very natural at center, which even more so than I think most people expected. I think he surprised people with his ability to sort of roll in there and play without any hiccups. And then Grant Newsome, he has his ups and downs. I mean, there's moments where, Taco Charlton will make him look a little silly, but then there's moments where he'll make Taco Charlton look a little silly. So, he's got a lot of work to do, obviously, still, but he's a natural, 6'7", 300-pound, athletic, really, really smart left tackle, and he's going to be the guy. I think they have their 5. I don't think that there's any reason to think anybody else is going to take a job from those 5, and I think that's important, too. They've had all spring to work together. They'll have the summer to work together, and then I would assume in camp it'll be, barring injury, those 5 again. Which will give them plenty of time to adjust. I think it'll be a better group. I really do. I think this will be a year where you see Michigan's running game take on a new, kind of level, and a lot of that will be, offensive line related. Well,
in the backfield, we expect Davion Smith to lead the way this season. After him, how does the competition for carries look to you, Nick?
Davion, I think he was a little banged up this spring at times. Nothing serious, but I think his reps were a little bit limited, which is fine. He's obviously, I think they know what they have from him, and they expect him to be the guy, at least right now. But I think the more impressive thing, I guess, or the more notable thing is I think they've really liked what they've seen from Ty Isaac this spring. Last spring it was the opposite. They did not like what they saw from Ty Isaac after last spring. I think he missed time with a couple of injuries that they wondered how serious those injuries were and if he could, maybe he should be on the field working through them. And this spring he's dropped weight. He's played tougher. His focus has been better. He looks like a better player. He looks more like the guy who a lot of teams really recruited hard in 2012 or whatever year it was. And so, I think they're excited about that. But at the same time, it's kind of one of those fool me once, fool me twice type of deals. They've got to see this happen for Ty for more than just a couple of weeks. It's got to be, he's got to be able to do this all summer on his own and with his teammates, and then come back into fall and continue to, produce like that every day, every single day in practice and everything else. And I feel like they think if that can happen, then they've really got a nice 1-2 with him, Davion Smith, and then whatever Drake Johnson can give you, as we know. Drake, it's a shame for him because he's not the guy he was before the knee surgeries. But at the same time, when he is healthy as he can be, he can provide you with something, and they know that. So Drake's not going to be a guy, I don't think, at this point in his career that you could ask for, go out there and give us 22, 23 carries. I don't think that's realistic, but he can always have a role with you. So between Davion Smith and Ty Isaac and then the unique wrinkle that Drake Johnson gives you, I think they are hopeful, if Isaac continues to hold up his end of it, that they've got a really nice, trio there of backs. And then, it remains to be seen what, Kareem Walker and Kingston Davis can give you. I think that for the most part this spring they've looked like freshmen, which isn't a bad thing. It is what it is. So I think that there's plenty of time for them to grow and learn into their roles. And if they can contribute on the field this fall, then I'm sure they'll find a way to get them in there. But it looks like those three at the top are the ones that are really interested in, Isaac being the one who's kind of made the most starts.
The wideouts look solid with Chesson and Darboh. Of course, we had some attrition over the weekend. After that, who do you think is pushing for time and looking good right now?
Yeah, Grant Perry, I think, is probably the number 3 right now. And I think everybody else is kind of chasing him in terms of that, third receiver spot. I think behind him, it was Maurice Ways, and he obviously is now out for a couple months with a broken foot, which is unfortunate for Maurice. He'll, I guess, based on what Harbaugh had said, he'll miss the entire summer. He should be back by fall camp, but at the same time, you kind of wonder, what kind of shape is he going to be in? It's going to take him probably a little while to get back for that, and he might not be right completely until who knows? I mean, maybe even midway through the season. So it could be a while for him. They're encouraged at times by Drake Harris. Again, same thing. Drake needs to gain weight. He needs to gain strength, and he knows this. But I think that's proven to be, outside of staying healthy, which he is right now. Outside of staying healthy, gaining and adding and keeping weight has been the hardest thing he's had to do in college, and it's still something he's sort of battling. And then there's another guy, Amir Mitchell, hasn't had any problems with gaining strength. I mean, he walked in the door 6'3", 210 pounds, looking like a college receiver. I mean, he looks the part, every single bit of it, physically and athletically. It's just the mental part, hanging on to the football, running the right route, all those types of things. I think Amir Mitchell's going to play this season, but he's obviously got to work on the little stuff. His physical attributes are all off the charts. He may be the most physically ready freshman they have on the roster, but right now, in terms of the whole package, I would say it's Darboh and Chesson, and Grant Perry as the 3 with Harris and Amir Mitchell probably pushing Grant.
With us on our Game Day segment this week as we talk Michigan football as spring practice nears an end is Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Moving over to the defensive side, Nick, the linebacking group, some think is an area of concern just because there are some new faces vying for time there. Your take on that position group, Nick?
Yeah, they really were happy with what they got from Mike McCray as the starting kind of weak side backer in Don Brown's defense. They were really, really excited about him this spring. He is still healthy after what is, I guess, basically 13 practices, and I think they feel like if he can continue that that health streak, I guess, which has been the one thing that's always haunted him, then he can be a real player for them. I mean, he's a big kid. He can move. He's athletic. I think Mike's like 6'4", 240, 250 pounds. I mean, he's really big. He's a big guy who can do some things. He's just got to continue to be healthy. So they're excited about him, but I think cautiously excited. You know what I mean? Because it's got to be. We got to. I think Harbaugh had said basically, we got to see him take contact for several months and be able to handle it without getting hurt. So there's that. They really liked what they saw from Ben Gideon. I think they challenged him at the beginning of spring to really take ownership of things and turn a corner, and they feel like he has, and he is the he's the Mike, and he's kind of the unquestioned starter in there right now, and he's looked very good. He looked very good in Florida. He looked very good Saturday with all parts of his game. I mean, he looks good in coverage. He looks good against the run, and he looks like he knows what he's doing. He looks like he's getting guys in the right spots and everything else. And then. But after that is where it becomes kind of an issue in terms of depth, because a guy like Noah Furbush has had some nice days and some ups and downs or whatever at the Sam linebacker spot. Peppers has obviously played a lot of Sam, but that's not an exclusive situation. I mean, he's going to play Sam at times, and there's other times where he's going to be a safety. There's other times where he's going to be doing other stuff and what have you. He's got so many roles on this defense. I still don't know if you can label him at one position, and then again, so you look at the traditional linebacker types behind McCray and Gideon, and you've got, you look at a guy like Devin Bush who can contribute, but again, he's still just a freshman, and you don't know what you're going to get from him from snap to snap. Reuben Jones is a guy that they really are, I think, really intrigued by, and are still spending a lot of time working with. But again, it's his first spring playing the position ever. He's never played inside linebacker. But they really like him. Reuben is 6'4", 230, 240 pounds, very athletic, but still has kind of, hiccups with where to go and what to do and everything else. So you've got some guys there, but outside of Gideon and McCray, and, I suppose Peppers when he's in there at that Sam spot, it's hard for them right now, I think, to trust a lot of them because they just haven't played a lot of football. So the depth is really the main concern. If they can get through the season with Gideon and McCray healthy, then I think they'll be fine. But but if anybody gets dinged up and you've got to switch things up on the inside, then I think that's where maybe some concern could roll in.
Well, behind those guys is the secondary led by Jabril Peppers, and as you just noted, he being Jabril is going to play a variety of positions this year, but he also has Jordan Lewis back there at one of the corners. This looks like the best secondary we've seen at Michigan in a long time, Nick.
Yeah, you've really got two guys who are outstanding football players at the position. Jordan Lewis, spoke with him the other day, and I asked him because it just appears that he just looks so comfortable with what he's doing. And you talk to a guy like Mike Zordich, who is his position coach, and you say, what can Jordan do to get better? And he kind of laughs and says he kind of, in terms of a college player, Jordan is, it's hard to ding him. It's hard to really say, he's got to do better at this. He's got to do better at that. I mean, he's really truly just fine tuning his craft at this point. I think he's totally somewhat mastered it at this level. And I think that's, he understands that he is a shutdown corner on this team. He is the guy that every time he's playing a team and they have a good receiver, he has to stand opposite him and stop him. And he understands that that's his role and embraces it. And it's a rarity. It's a rare thing in all of football, pro or college, to have a guy who can hold up to that. And you have that with Jordan Lewis. And I'm not so sure if it's a situation where you can say Jordan is going to take half the field away from an opposing defense, but in some instances, that's exactly what it'll be. Is that he'll take your best guy and he'll take him out of the game, and you'll have to play without him, and that's just such a huge chip for a defensive coordinator to play, every game, and he's a total difference maker. And then Peppers, obviously, is a guy who can play anything. I mean, he can play safety, he can play nickel, he can play corner. He's obviously playing a lot of that Sam spot. I think by playing him at safety and Sam and in the slot, that allows him to kind of take advantage of all his strengths. They're going to let him play in the box. I think if all goes according to plan, Peppers would be Michigan's tackles for loss leader, because I think they want him in the defensive backfield or the offensive backfield as much as possible. I don't think his biggest strength is standing out on an island with a guy and running and just covering the way Jordan Lewis does. I think sometimes you waste him by just doing that because he can do so many other things by the line of scrimmage, and that's what they're going to do for him. And then obviously I think Stribling has looked better opposite Lewis. Jeremy Clark is getting better, and DeMonte Thomas and Leno Hill are the starting safeties. They've played a lot of football, and they've played a lot of football together. So it's a confident group led by some really, really good players. 2 All-Americans back there. Hard to find a lot of faults right now, anyway, in that defensive backfield.
Well, Nick, it might be early to ask this question, but what, if any, changes have you noticed with the defense under new coordinator Don Brown?
Well, they're gone. They're truly starting from a base 4-man front. That's gone. Is the shuffling of last year Durkin would. Sometimes sometimes it truly would be a 4-man front. Sometimes it'd be a 3-man front. That buck linebacker position is gone, so to speak. But at the same time, it's switched out or swapped out with a more athletic Sam linebacker, which when Peppers is playing it, that's kind of a hybrid Sam/safety. And it sounds like still that's going to be his home position, but he could obviously move around to different spots. Other than that, they do bring a lot of pressure. They do blitz probably more than Durkin did. But other than that, the only other difference is that this won't be an exclusively press man coverage defense, and that they'll play a lot of press man, but they're also going to mix up some zone stuff. So they'll mix up his ability or his willingness or kind of desire to kind of mix things up in terms of coverage looks at quarterbacks. We'll see. That's one thing that's different. But other than that, it's still sort of the same concept, and then it's really aggressive. Durkins was aggressive too. They like to blitz and try to get the quarterback some, and it's a group that will, continue to be anchored by what is a really good defensive line. And I think that's the main idea there. I think Don Brown knows that. He said the first time he talked to him, he said, my defense is, has had a similar look throughout my career, but he admitted at the same time, he's like, if we got, but I'm always going to play to the strengths of what we have. And if we've got a really, really good defensive line, then we're going to let them anchor us and sort of play from there. So, I think that might be something we see.
On Sunday, Nick, one of the headlines to your article was MLive, said that circus aside, Michigan's on-field growth this spring is impressive. You had the week down in Florida at IMG, and you had the open practice on Saturday. So there's been more access this year, as you mentioned, more than in a long time. Talk about your overall impressions from what you've seen this spring and why you think the progress has been so impressive.
Yeah, I just think, a lot of people have sort of, and I guess this is fair because not everybody's here every day, but a lot of people have focused on the, sort of the circus aspect of it and, Harbaugh's tweets or the, people's reactions to everything and all the hoopla and everything else that surrounds the program constantly. But, we've had the unique kind of, the unique opportunity this year of really seeing them on the field when all that's gone inside. You see them behind the curtain some a little bit. We've seen, I think it's 16 hours. And like you said, Mike, I don't know if any media corps has seen the 16 hours combined in the last 50 years of Michigan football practice. I mean, so we've seen a lot of practice, and we've seen a lot of stuff on the field with our own eyes, and it's given us an opportunity to see growth in real time. I mean, in years past, we would hear about it, and that's all it would be. And you remember exactly what I'm talking about. It's so-and-so's really turning a corner. Here comes such and such, and then the season would come and it would never happen. Well, this we've seen it, and we've seen growth. I mean, you see a team that practices like an NFL team practices. There's no music, there's no wasted time, there's no screwing around, there's no they're not bringing out the ice cream truck to break up the middle of practice to slow to whatever. I mean, they're out there to work for 4 hours, and they've worked for 4 hours, and they're disciplined. They're far more disciplined than any team I remember seeing from 2011 to 2014. They don't make stupid penalties. They don't do stupid stuff. I mean, they're not putting the ball on the ground. I don't see guys fumbling. I don't see the center dropping the ball. I don't see missed tackles everywhere all over the place. It's a more disciplined group 15 months into the Harbaugh kind of era than it's ever been, and I think that's really starting to take hold, and that's really starting to become their strength, in that they understand how hard they're expected to work, and they do it without complaint. And they do it without hesitation. And you do that every day, all year long, and you're going to get better. And that's obviously what's happening here. I do think that, this team has some holes, this team has some flaws and some things they have to fix. But I do think with all the guys they have coming back that we mentioned on defense, some of the experience they've got coming back on offense as well, everything else combined, and then combined with the fact that I think that it's going to be very hard for opponents to outwork Jim Harbaugh's football teams. It's going to be very hard for opponents to be more physical than his football teams. I said a long time ago that his best teams were the teams that nobody wanted to play because they were very uncomfortable to play, in that when you were done with 4 quarters, you felt it. And I think that that's what this team is going to end up being. So if they can have all those plus players that are returning play like it, play up to capability, this is a team I think if the quarterback gets settled, and everything else gets settled, I think this is truly a team that could compete for a Big Ten championship on the field and not just talk about it, if that makes any sense. I mean, I think this is finally a team that's going to work harder than it talks. Don't just tell us, show us. And I think that this team has shown us some stuff over the past month. And for me, I think that's why it's been different, and that's why it's looked like a team that's on the rise, and not just one that says it's on the rise and just take our word for it. We've truly seen it. And I think that's for Michigan fans. I think that should be encouraging because, to me, I mean, it does look like an improving football team that's growing and strengthening right along, kind of the plan that Harbaugh's had since he got here.
Well, final question for you, Nick. This Friday, it's the spring game. It's at night. It's on BTN. Another great showcase opportunity for the program. And in most programs, after the spring game, attention dies down until July when the preseason hype starts. And that's most programs. I have a hunch Jim Harbaugh will have his program in the news right up until fall practice starts, though, Nick.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got the satellite camps already planned out, several stops down south this year in the month of June. But again, that'll be interesting to see because I think the NCAA is going to vote. I believe they're supposed to vote in April on whether or not you can do them. So, it still could be something where the NCAA comes in and says you can't do it, and who knows? Maybe there's some other wrinkle he's got up his sleeve that he can counter with it. I don't know, but we'll see if that all comes into play. And then obviously June is a big recruiting month for them. It was last year. They had so many commitments during that month, regardless of the satellite camps. So, they'll just spend most of April and May, as much of May as you can, recruiting, and then obviously all of June. And that's anytime Jim Harbaugh's out recruiting, that seems to make some sort of noise. So. I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about over the summer, as there was last year as well.
I'm sure there won't be a dull moment. With us this week on our Game Day segment to help us wrap up Saturday's open practice and talk about Michigan football to this point in the spring has been Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Nick, as always, it's a pleasure, and I suppose the next time we'll talk, it will be sometime as we get ready for the season. So enjoy spring and summer, and we look forward to getting you back on this fall.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks.
Wolverine Quick Hits is next as we wrap it up for another week here on The Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, the University of Michigan women's basketball team clawed back from a 15-point first-quarter deficit and got the go-ahead basket from freshman Hallie Tome with 8 seconds remaining to defeat Temple 77-76 in the quarterfinal round of the WNIT on Monday evening at Chrysler Center. Sophomore Caitlin Flaherty scored 23 points. Senior Madison Ristovsky had a season-high 19 points to go with 9 rebounds. And Tome chipped in 13 points and 8 boards in just 21 minutes. U of M will travel to Fort Myers, Florida to take on Florida Gulf Coast in a WNIT semifinal on Thursday at 8 p.m. Softball opened the Big Ten season by taking 2 of 3 from Northwestern over the weekend. The number 2 ranked Wolverines are now 24-3 overall, 2-1 in the Big Ten. Michigan will be on the road for their next 7 games, beginning this weekend with a 3-game series in Bloomington against Indiana. Number 23 baseball swept UIC this weekend, winning all 3 games. Michigan is now 16-5 on the season. This week they will be at home to face Central Michigan, and then hit the road for a 3-game weekend series with Northwestern to open Big Ten play. Like us on Facebook at The Michigan Man Podcast, and follow us on Twitter at The Michigan Man, where you can also follow Wolverine Sports Radio at Go Blue Radio. Our free show apps are available from the iTunes and the Google Play Store, so I invite you to check those out. That will do it for this week. I'll be back next week to recap the spring game and get you updated on whatever else is happening on the Michigan athletic scene. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until next time, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!